Hey, everybody, welcome to another fantastic show of Nerds on Tap, where you get to get nerdy with us for an hour with me and my special guest. Nerds on Tap is always brought to you by Digital Boardwalk, America's top managed services provider, and Smarter Web, your go-to marketing experts in the world of digital marketing. Today on Nerds, we bring you Mr. Andrew Martin, founder of Atlas Financial Strategies. Andrew is the founder and president of Atlas. Andrew has been a financial advisor since 2011 and was honored to be named in the top 50 financial security professionals in the state of Florida by Forbes magazine for 2 consecutive years. He has a passion for helping clients gain clarity on their financial plan and helping them find creative solutions to address their needs. He holds a bachelor's in business administration from the University of South Alabama. He is passionate about business planning, financial planning, and retirement planning. Welcome to the show, Andrew.
Thank you, Tim. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. I like your suspenders.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, I have 2 modes. It's either professional or homeless. So
I think
yeah.
you prefer to buy a tire at home.
No. That's dressing up for me, man. I don't.
I'm a t-shirt and jeans guy, and when you see, I think the only time you've ever seen me, I've been dressed up.
Yeah.
You're
snazzy.
Yeah, man. This is my incognito mode, so you get to now. You're gonna spot me out and about and go, "That's Tim over there that looks like the homeless."
I was about to say, when I see people out that are used to seeing me like this, you can tell there's like a second where they're like, "Is that the same guy?"
I dig the suspenders. I told you that last time I ran into.
Thank you.
So, Andrew, you know what this show's all about. We're going to talk about what you do and how you engage with your clients and help your clients. But we also do something else on this show. It wouldn't be called Nerds on Tap if we didn't have a good beer to crank it up.
Love it.
All right. Suds, what do we got? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Nerds on Tap. I'm your host, Tim Shoup, and I couldn't be more excited to embark on this nerdy adventure with all of you. So grab your favorite brew, because things are about to get exciting.
3, 2, 1, go!
All right, our first beer of the day is the Tate's Helles German-style lager from Oyster City Brewing Company in Apalachicola, Florida. The brewer describes it as a traditional lager utilizing all German malts and hops to produce malt-accented, lightly hopped, golden, crisp, and crushable experience for the drinker. It's named after the local Tate's Hell State Forest in Apalachicola.
That's good.
That's real good.
That is real good.
Yeah.
Where's that from?
Apalachicola.
Apalachicola.
Stone's throw, man, right down the road. That's very good.
That's tasty. I am going to sip on that while we get into your background, Andrew.
Sure.
So tell me, your journey as a financial advisor, we talked about how you started in 2011. Mm-hmm. Tell me, let's start just by talking about how you got into it. What started this journey for Mr. Andrew?
Sure. I knew from an early age that I needed to work for myself. I just don't have the kind of personality to be a good employee. So I knew from an early age I would want to work for myself, be in control of my destiny and income and all the things. And so I went to college for business thinking I wanted to own a gym. And because, you can own a business and be in the gym all day. That sounds great.
Stay fit and, and build your future while you do it.
Right. Get into college and start kind of looking at the business model of that and kind of what it takes to do that. And I was like, I don't think that's for me. No disrespect to the gym owners out there, but just seemed like, wow, that's a lot of work and a lot of upfront costs there.
A lot of overhead.
Yeah. And so I was lost there for a little bit and remember taking a personal finance course as an elective, which is a kind of whole conversation in and of itself, that it's not a mandatory course, that it was an elective. I remember taking that course and kind of immediately after a few weeks being like, wow, all of this is super useful information and will have a direct impact on the rest of my life. Found it terribly interesting because, I was like, this will, really have an impact on my financial health and things like that. And all of this is super applicable to, the rest of my life. And I remember being terribly interested in it and kind of talking to other students in the class and, wondering like, why is this the first time I've ever heard this? Why is this an elective and not a required course? And all that sort of stuff. Everybody else kind of felt the same way. And then, you start talking to your parents about the things that you're learning, assuming that they know those things, and kind of quickly find out like, oh, y'all weren't taught these things either.
Hey, let me tell you something. I had to help my fifth grader, my fifth grade daughter with math one night. And I had to relearn math the new way in one evening, and it wasn't fun. So I can only imagine. Go ahead.
Yeah, I talked to the parents and realized that they never learned these things either, or they've had to learn it the hard way. Talk to other adults and kind of find that's the commonality with 90+% of people. And I remember thinking I was so enthralled by it, so interested in it, that I was like, if I could do this, I didn't really know what it looked like, but I was like, if I could do something like this as a career and help educate people on these things, like what a great way to make a living, right? To help people with things that, unfortunately, most things cost money, and most people struggle with money. So like, what a great way to make a living if you can help people with that and make a living while doing that. And then started kind of on that journey of, all right, well, what does it look like to there's different ways to get into that industry and different things that you could do. And kind of happened upon that and started in that direction. So that's why I would have needed to go another year to get my finance degree. And I was like, well, I don't really need a degree to do this. There's all sorts of licenses you have to pass to do, so the degree doesn't actually do any good. But I started down that path of taking more finance courses before I graduated and things like that. But graduated with my business degree, I guess, with an emphasis in finance, if you will. But again, it's very nice to be able to make a living having an impact on people's lives via their finances.
So I'm thinking about that, and I'm thinking about myself as I, was growing up and experiencing the world and, moving around and figuring out my future. And in my 20s, investing and the world of finance was pretty, it was far-fetched for me because I didn't make a lot of money.
Sure.
Oh, I was homeless at one point. I think I told you that.
Oh, yeah.
For a couple months.
Yeah.
And technically lived in a tent. And I will tell you that people were telling me, oh, yeah, it's your job. Yeah, you should, do the 401k, do this and that. And all I saw in my 20s was how that took away from my weekend beer money and how it would impact me very short-sighted, in a very short-sighted way. What is your demographic? I'm going off script a little bit because this hits home. I started late in life investing. Wish I had started earlier. I had the capability to start earlier. I just didn't know where to start. So your demographic, it's all over the place, isn't it? Young and old.
It is. And I just will say, saying what you said, everyone says they wish they would have started earlier or gotten serious about it earlier or taken the advice of whoever, right, gave them some advice earlier in life.
I think part of it is it rolls down generationally too, because my father wasn't an investor unless it was a short-term CD.
Sure.
He wasn't investing. Oh, that's gambling.
Right.
But then when he got older and he was retired and mom was gone, he was gambling all the time. So instead of investing, he'd go to the casino. But your demographic's all over the place.
Yes.
Talk to me about that, and talk to me what happens when somebody comes to Mr. Martin, when somebody says, hey, I just, where do I start?
Sure. I'll start by saying that being young-ish, right, getting my start fresh out of college in this industry, kind of by default, a lot of your clients end up looking like you, right? So, I mean, those are your peers, and that's who you know, and you end up getting a lot of clients that, look like you. And I'll say, I guess before I dive into that real quick, I think the traditional model in the industry is broken in a lot of ways in this industry, because the traditional model is the assets under management model, or AUM model. So like back in the day, there used to be stock brokers, and they would make a 1% commission for buying and selling stocks. And that's just the way it was done. There wasn't really financial advisors. It was stockbrokers, right? And then people kind of wised up to the very glaring, obvious conflicts of interest with that model. So you're getting paid every time you buy and sell. What if it's in my best interest to buy the stock and hold it for a long period of time or something like that, right? So you can see that, they're encouraged to churn, right? Whether you need to buy or sell this stock right now or not, they want you to buy it or sell it because that triggers a commission for them. People kind of wised up to that, and then it moved to like the wrap fee, right? So that 1 or 2% fee that most advisors are going to charge nowadays to manage your assets. I think the inherent conflicts of interest with that model is one, your ability to work with that advisor is contingent upon you having a sizable amount of money to invest, number one. Number two, that you are willing to let them manage it for you, and you're willing to let them charge that 1 or 2% fee to manage the assets. So that leaves a lot of young people out, right? That leaves a lot of, so, I mean, even if you had $1 million in your 401k or something like that, the advisor can't take custody of that money to manage for you and charge the 1 or 2% fee. So even if you have, a sizable portfolio, if it's not in the form that the advisor can take custody of and manage for you, you're not a client for them, right? And so there's a lot of the firms, some of the firms that everybody would know the names of, that the advisors get paid nothing on accounts under $250,000. So you can imagine, right, the majority of people, particularly younger people, don't have that amount of investments, or it's not somewhere that the advisor can take custody of. So it leaves a lot of people unserved or underserved. And again, there's a lot of conflicts because, again, it's basically, do you have money to invest? Is it sizable? Are you willing to let me manage it and charge you the 1 or 2% fee? And then usually the advice kind of begins and ends with what to do with that money, right? How to invest it. And that's all the conversations. Here's what the stock market's doing. Here's what we're doing. Here's whatever changes we made. And generally the advice doesn't go outside. Doesn't go outside that circle. Of what to do with that money. And, you might come to the advisor and say, hey, I have this money. What should I do with it? And maybe that money should go to paying down debt. Maybe it should go to padding savings. Maybe you want to invest in other types of assets like real estate or something like that, or your business or what have you. But
so you help them plan with things that even fall outside of your portfolio, like that you'll help them manage their assets. If it's real estate, obviously you're not being commissioned or get your fees on the real estate, but you're helping them go, I think do you help them decide on the investment? Probably not.
Yeah, no, we're not helping them pick out which property to buy or anything, but the planning that goes around that as it pertains to the cash flow that may or may not come from that property, the cash outlay of that property, the costs associated with it, how it fits into the other things that they're doing, the asset protection and estate planning that needs to be involved with this new asset addition to your portfolio and things like that.
So if they come to you and they go, hey, I found this great piece of property, I'm going to borrow, I'm going to borrow the money to do this instead of using cash, but unfortunately the interest rates are pretty high. I'm paying, maybe they didn't get such a great deal as far as their investment, even though they had money, but it's all tied up. Are you going to you're going to give them tips that might not be?
I'll give you a recent example. So we have a client that owns a business, and, her thought process was, and she would like to sell the business in maybe 5-ish years is kind of the plan. And she's, 50-ish or so. And she's, wondering, she's renting her commercial property that she's running her business out of now. She's like, I'd like to buy it. I don't know about renting it. I'd love to, have that asset and things like that. And I'm like, okay, So let's assume that you're talking about $1 million piece of property, which is probably pretty reasonable for what she's looking at. I was like, all right, you're going to have to put 20% down typically. So that's $200,000. And then there's going to be closing costs and things like that. Let's call that $250,000. And then there's going to be inevitable, the likelihood of it being a completely turnkey piece of property. And obviously you're going to have to fill it with stuff, you're either going to have to want to paint it, you're going to put furniture or decorations or things. Yeah. And anyway, so let's call it another $50,000. So now you're talking about $300,000, cash outlay for that property. And then of course you have the payment for it and things like that. And I'm like, you're going to sell the business in the next 5 years. So, I mean, we just got to kind of look at, does that $300,000 investment make more sense in that piece of property if you're going to sell it in 5 years, which totally could make sense. Or does it make more sense at this stage in your business to spend that money reinvested back into your business to grow it to get a higher sale price in 5 years, right? So where's the best return on that capital and where's the best flexibility with that money and things like that, right?
Now you're talking my language.
Yeah. So
reinvesting back into the business.
Yeah. That's one of the things that we preach to business owners. Cause I think, if you look at, I'm sorry for getting off script.
It's okay. I just know from my own perspective, a business owner's biggest asset is their business.
100%.
You've got your homes, your real estate, your home, homes,
Yeah.
real estate, your vehicles, this and that. You've got appreciation and depreciation. But a business, if it's managed well, it is always going to grow.
Yeah, and I could just you could take a nap and I could talk for the next couple hours about that. But so a couple things. One, a lot of business owners don't own a business. They own a job and they hire other people to help them with that job. So it's not the type of, you know what I mean? If the business is too overly reliant upon them, you're just self-employed and you hired other people to help you with that job, right? So that's
working in it, not on it.
That's right. So that's number one. Yes, the business typically, for most business owners, is far and away their biggest asset. Unfortunately, most business owners, 80+%, never get to capitalize on this asset that they built. So 80-something% of businesses never sell.
Because they're the value.
Because they're the value typically. And they just, I think beginning with the end in mind. I think being intentional, beginning with the end in mind, understanding. So I was just talking to a client, a buddy about this yesterday. He's not a client yet,
Yet.
Right. He the type of company that he has, and it's just him and one other guy, and just trying to tell him, because he talked about selling it one day. I said, bro, it's just you and this guy right now. Like it's not a business. It's just you're just selling your service. Like it's not a business. This is not sellable at all. Like there's a lot of things you got to do, and you just got to decide, do you want to make this a business? And you're going to have to, your leadership, you're going to have to grow as a entrepreneur and as a leader to do that, which is going to be uncomfortable and it's going to be hard and it's going to take time. Or you can just say, I'm just fine owning this job. I'm going to take income, create income by doing this thing, and then I'll invest that income elsewhere. Or do you want to invest in the business and make it a business? Anyways, I say that to say, 80-something% of businesses never sell. Of the small percentage that do, the vast majority of them do not sell for anywhere near what the business owner is hoping to get or think it's worth or any of that stuff, right? So
that's a whole other show. And I get passionate when we talk about that because there's a lot of little things that business owners could be doing within their business to maximize their value, but I'm going to have to save that for another show.
Sure. In my opinion, wisely reinvesting back into a well-run business is arguably one of the best things that you can do. Not saying that you shouldn't diversify outside of the business. Obviously, there's benefit to diversification. But most business owners would like to grow the value of the business if they're that forward-thinking, number one. Number two, every business owner would like to reduce taxes, right? So...
No.
Yeah, you don't say.
No, that's the last thing on our minds.
So,
I think we talked about that when we had a bourbon one night, right?
Yep. So weirdly, a weird kink in the tax code is income is taxed at the highest rate. Capital gains taxes are taxed at a much lower rate. Income tax right now, highest is 37%. Highest capital gain tax right now is 20%. So you look like you have something to say.
I'm all too familiar with all those numbers. So.
Yeah. So if you can reinvest back into the business in a way to reduce your highest rate, which is income, and grow the value of the business, which is arguably going to be a better return on that capital than in a lot of other places. And you don't have to pay taxes on the growth of the business until it's sold. And then depending on how you structure the sale, whether it be an asset sale or stock sale, and even if it's asset sale, depending on how that's structured, hopefully the majority of it is going to be capital gains taxes, which are going to be taxed at a much lower rate. Right?
And those are going to be your shareholder distributions from ownership.
Right.
So just speaking to our audience from a business owner's viewpoint, if you're going to reinvest back into your business, what is the most expensive thing to reinvest back in your business where you're going to get your biggest return? In my opinion, I don't think it's real estate. I don't think it's physical things. I think it is your talent, your people, the people that are your front line and are going to replicate what your vision was for that business moving forward. You invest in people and of course the evolution of your product offerings, you are going to maximize your return.
Yeah. So obviously caveat being it depends on the industry and, the industry the business is in and so on. But yeah, generally speaking, it's whatever the revenue drivers of the business are, right? So that could be people, right? If you're in a type of business that's the case. But whatever is going to increase the cash flow and or revenue / profitability of the business, because, probably as you well know, most businesses sell for a multiple of EBITDA. There's all sorts of different, ways that businesses sell, but that's a pretty typical one. EBITDA is earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization, and it's a fancy accounting metric for what basically boils down to profit, right? So profit, and that's another thing too with a lot of business owners is they'll say, how much revenue they're doing, and I'm like, that's great. How much of that is profit?
Yeah. You don't multiply times the amount of revenue you have. You multiply times the amount of profit you have.
That's right. Yeah. So I think investing in something that's, in revenue drivers of the business, obviously making things more efficient. But to your point, yes, people. And I think there's a lot of business owners that try to not pay more than they have to for certain positions, or they're too caught up on what's the market rate of this position. Like basically how much can I get away with paying this person?
I think it's how valuable that person is to the growth of the business, more so than just what the role is. Now you have to structure it. Of course. You have to have a structure that people know this is what they're projecting.
Of course.
But if you see a top performer and you see somebody that's really killing it, and you're going to want to keep them around a lot longer because they're going to help you grow. And turnover, which is what's the word I'm looking for? It's an outcome from not paying people enough. When you have high turnover and you have to replace those people, what do you think? Does it actually cost more to bring a new person on in the form of training and getting them ramped up, and maybe the loss of business in the meantime because people are missing their star, or is it just par for the course?
I think that I forget what the name of the HR, the national HR group, whatever, they have some sort of association or group. I forget the name of theirs, of that group, but they say that on average, obviously industry and things like that play a role, but I think they say on average it costs 3 months salary to replace a person.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Like that. Yeah. So A players want to play where A players can play best, right? So I mean, you have to build an organization that A players want to play in. And, a lot of business owners miss. I think it was Henry Ford said, he went through and doubled the salary for all of his workers across the board. And he called it his best money saving thing he ever did.
Where was that in the milestone of Ford? Was that after the Model T, or was that down the road?
Honestly, I don't
See, I don't know either.
No.
I'm going to have to look that up because it's interesting to know where he was in the evolution
That's true.
of that company.
That's true.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And, so I think, paying for a position, being willing to pay 30, 50% above what the market is to attract A players, if not more than that, because an A player is going to be 3 to 5 times more productive than a kind of typical employee, right? So if you can pay 50% or even 100% more, but get 3 to 5 times the productivity from that person, right? And if you're paying really well, people are, so just like with Henry Ford, he paid doubled the pay for everybody. The people working there felt very grateful to work there. They were happy to work there, happy employees, a productive employee. And then, he had people from other car companies beating down his door to want to work there, right? So, he drastically skewed the supply-demand, the labor supply-demand in his favor because everybody wanted to work there. So everybody worked there. No, as soon as I leave, this is the best job I'm going to get.
Yeah.
And so there's a line of people waiting to take my job. So I better be.
Well, before we get into our next beer, let's talk about, and we kind of already touched on some of these things, but when I invest, and I focus on financial goals, which are one of the key things I look at. I look at milestones, wealth creating, and sort of building a plan for my future and my eventual retirement, whatever that is these days. Sure. We talked about that. What is retirement?
Right.
Tell us about some of the things you may not have discussed already, and what you do and your role in helping someone secure their future. Maybe, even if there's a case study or something that we can talk about to kind of take our audience down a little bit of a path on things they may not have thought about.
So I'll just say, this is for, let's just say, personal financial planning, not business planning or anything.
Sure.
So just because every business owner needs personal financial planning too. So I'll just talk about personal financial planning since it'll apply to most people. To your point, there's a lot of things that we know. There's a lot of things that we know we don't know. And there's a lot of things that we don't know right? So I think for the average person, there's what we call your financial foundation, all the not sexy stuff, right? Estate planning, emergency fund, insurances, all that sort of stuff, right? But things that we need to make sure to have these things in place because that's the foundation to your financial plan, right? That kind of props everything up, and without those things, everything can kind of crumble if that crack in the foundation becomes exposed. So there's a lot of that sort of stuff. And if you're younger, really in any stage, but particularly if you're younger, small things, usually there's not huge drastic changes we have to make to a person's plan to have a very meaningful impact. It's usually just small inefficiencies, right? So I feel like most people, they're like, I'm doing good things. I'm saving, I'm investing, and I'm paying down debt. All objectively good things. I feel like what they're not exactly sure if what they're doing is the most efficient way to do it, and if what they're doing is going to allow them to achieve their goals. So they're just focused on kind of the short term. I know I'm doing good things. I don't know if what I'm doing is the best thing.
Right. So this is what I hear when you say that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if you're using a credit card that has a 22% interest rate, and you've got money, well, let me rephrase that. Let me do this in a way I can understand.
Sure.
Let's say you have a loan that's at 3% on a house or whatever it is, and you have money that you want to invest, but you know that you can invest it in a short-term CD, and I'm going to use these things, short-term things as a concept here, and you can get 5.25% back on that in 6 months, let's say. Should I pay down that loan, or should I put it towards a CD?
So I'll say there's behavioral finance is a very big part of this. So if it's just dollars and cents, This job is the easiest job.
So is that what I'm talking about? Behavioral?
So there's two parts to it.
Okay.
So there's the dollars and cents part of it, and then there's a behavioral part. So just numbers, right? Just, numbers on paper, obviously, from an efficiency of the dollar standpoint.
Simple math.
Yeah, this is right. If you're paying 3% on a mortgage and you can take that money and invest it somewhere in a CD or high yield savings
Make an
account.
extra 2.25%.
Right. Even if it was 4% or something, like, you're net ahead 1%. So that's number one. Number two, I hear a lot of people, particularly with mortgages, like, well, I'm paying extra towards my mortgage because I want to get it paid off. And once it's paid off, it's going to bring me a lot of comfort to have it paid off. It's like, all right, well, based on the pace of how much extra you're putting towards that, you'll get it paid off in 20 years instead of 30. That's still 20 years that things can hit the fan. That's still a long time, right? That you still got that payment, number one. Number two, if things did hit the fan, would you rather not have a $2,000 a month mortgage? Or would you rather have tens of thousands of dollars or in the six figures maybe of money somewhere that you can get your hands on if you needed it? I think that's a pretty obvious, right? You'd rather have a bucket of money somewhere that you can get your hands on instead of not having a $2,000 a month payment.
Yeah, I think we all like buckets of money.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Right. So having said that, right, it's our job to give the context and the information and all that about that. And then if somebody says, you've done your job in showing me that from a financial standpoint, this might not be the best decision, and I realize I will likely lose money by paying down the house as opposed to putting that money somewhere else. However, it will help me sleep better at night to have the house paid off. Great. Let's move forward with that assumption. I've done all I can do. We're all adults here. I've given you the information. That's what decision. I'm here to help you make an educated decision. I've given you the education to be able to make that decision. This is a decision you're making, and we will move forward with that assumption, right? So to your point, yes, generally it's arbitrage, right? So whether it be interest rate arbitrage or as a business owner, time arbitrage, labor arbitrage, right? It's all arbitrage. How can we leverage things in a way that's going to give us the best bang for our buck?
So one short tip for the audience out there on what they can do, just one short tip that they may not know about before we grab another beer. Because I'm ready to get another beer.
Okay. From a personal planning standpoint?
Yeah, why don't we take that? I think we've got we have a lot of business owners watching this too. So
I'll say one of the things that I see most, I could probably count on one hand if I was missing some fingers, how many people we've met with who have their estate planning done and up to date. So, and again, that's not anything that, you need to see an attorney to do that, right? Mm-hmm. We can help with the planning of that, but the actual writing up the documents, you need to see an attorney for. But that is one of the main things that we see. And I mean, we could all.
So you're telling me they don't have it
done.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, I struggle thinking of, there's probably only 2 or 3 people in my entire career that I've met with who had their estate planning done and it was up to date.
We did ours 2 or 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like somehow I'm overcompensating later in life for all the things I didn't do early in life.
At least you're doing it now.
Well, that's good. That is a good segue into beer number 2.
Perfect.
But, I hate when I see a guest on here that hasn't finished their first beer. Oh, it's gone. Suds, what do we have?
All right, our second beer of the night is the Red Drum Amber Ale from the Ravenous Pig Brewery in Winter Park, Florida. It's described as deliciously balanced, medium-bodied, hoppy amber ale. Amarillo and Cascade hops lead the charge and complement the toffee and caramel notes.
Oh, that's nice and smooth.
You like that one?
Yeah. That's good.
This is a good evening beer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like this is something my mom would like. She's not a big beer drinker, but if we go out to eat, she'll get one, and she usually likes something like
I think that last beer that we had from Apalachicola, I think would be more of a simple go-to.
Mm-hmm.
I think this beer is that I got home from work, I just want to sit down and relax.
Maybe with a meal.
Where's that from, Jared?
This is from Winter Park, Florida, the Ravenous Pig Brewery.
Sorry, Suds. Now everybody knows you're real.
No.
Cat out of the bag.
All right. So let's talk about segment 2, achieving financial security. How do we get there? So first, I want to start by talking about top achievement here. Top 50 financial security professionals recognized by Forbes magazine in 22 and 23. Is that you?
Yes, sir. Yeah, that's when I got the email asking, so it was a kind of a big application, process and qualification process. And when I originally got the email about it asking to apply, I thought it was like spammy or something like that. I was like, they'd probably send
We get a lot of those
Yeah.
where you're like, is this real?
Yeah.
Did I really? Yeah. But this is Forbes.
Yeah. And so I was like, they probably send this to everybody. This isn't meant for me. And so the first one, I think we didn't respond to at all. And then they followed back up and I was like, all right, well, what the heck? We'll apply. I'm not really, don't hold a lot of hope that we'll get it. It'd be cool if we did, but we'll apply anyways. We didn't know that the application process was going to be as arduous as it was. But luckily I have, great team members that will do the heavy lifting on that for me. And then, it took them, I think they got the information either early in the year or late in the year, but they announced it, I think it was like July or something like that. But so I kind of forgot about it. And then we got the email.
So what is this award? Is this an award for top advisors, or does this impact any other verticals?
So I'm going to tell you what I believe it to be. And again, the application process was thorough. So I believe they looked at, everybody, at least everybody who applied in the state, or they looked at the folks in the state, and I think they had their metrics on, whether it be, production method, methodology, or, I'm not really sure what all they looked at, but I mean, we had to give them all sorts of information. So I'm sure they were kind of looking at everything. And,
I know all too well how those work, because I mean, Digital Boardwalk, we've won over 20 industry awards.
Good for you, man.
And the administrative process of that, as far as applying, I mean, it's all essay driven, and you're writing and I think that's going to be, how are they going to know the difference nowadays if people are leveraging AI? We don't use AI. We write everything by hand. We do leverage AI to help, for instance, structure the show, but we don't use it for original content.
For copy. Yeah.
It's just you always know.
Yeah.
You can always see certain words. God, who uses that word? But I know about that. I mean, most of these things are really essay focused, and if you know your stuff, you're gonna rank.
Yeah.
If you don't know your stuff, you're not gonna rank. So kudos to you, man.
Oh, thank you.
Kudos to you. That's a big deal. So tell me, I want to know from business owner to business owner, two completely different industries. I want to hear about your challenges and opportunities, both challenges and opportunities in the ever-evolving world of the financial industry. So go.
Challenges in this industry are from a operational standpoint, and this might be the case in your industry. It's the case in a lot of industries, but obviously it's highly regulated, and for good reason, right? There's been a lot of bad actors, and you got to create guardrails and do things like that. But it just is hard to every year. There's more things, there's more forms we have to fill out in paper, and their rationale is like, well, this is meant to protect the average person, and the adverse side effect of that is that it makes financial help less attainable for the average person, because it makes it more expensive for us to operate. So we can't, we have to charge a certain amount for clients and things like that, or only take on certain clients or whatever it is to be able to operate profitably. Right. So that's some of the biggest struggles. And then things like, for the most part, until maybe last year, as I think when the rule on this changed. But I don't know if you've ever noticed in the past, but you've never seen any like testimonials or reviews on planners or advisors websites or any of that stuff, because you're not allowed to have them, even if it was something as
So that's a compliancy thing in your industry. Is that FINRA or is that?
it's the SEC.
It's the
largely.
SEC.
Yeah, it could be FINRA as well. I don't
Yeah.
know, but that rule has been on the books since I think either the 60s or the 80s, so obviously pre-internet, and they just now changed the rule on that. And even with changing the rule, saying, yeah, we allow that now. So we've, on the website, what you won't see is that, so you see the Forbes thing, and I don't know how compliance approves the Forbes things. Maybe it's because it's Forbes. I don't know.
Right.
But, we've been lucky enough to have been voted best financial advisor in Pensacola for 17 times, and it can't be on the website.
Yeah, that's impressive.
And because they can't prove that we didn't pay for it, or we did, I don't know what their rationale is, but we can't have it on the website. We can't even have, even if you wanted to say like, Andrew's a nice guy, testimonial on the website or something like that, can't be there. So they just recently changed the rule. And then when they changed the rule, I was all excited about it, right? Saw it coming. It was, nothing happens quickly. So we knew it was coming for a little while, and reached out to compliance about it. I was like, hey, this is great. When can we do that? And they said, well, us and many other companies have reached out to the SEC because the guidance on it isn't very clear. So we've reached out for further guidance and clarification.
Mm-hmm.
And the SEC basically says, we think it's clear enough.
Okay.
Literally.
So prior to that change, were you able to come on a show like this? I mean, is that a gray area? Is that?
Yeah, I think probably you could, but obviously you just got to be careful about what you say.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but yeah, you can't have anyway. So, it's you have the SEC that is making the rules, enforcing the rules, judge, jury, all the stuff, right?
Yeah.
So, basically they're like, no, we think it's clear enough. Do what you think is best, and hope we don't come around and fine you if you break our rules that we wouldn't answer questions about or clarify. So those are challenges.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I already knew about that to a degree,
Mm-hmm.
but it's great to be able to tell the world about it, because I'm sure they go to a website and they're like, but nobody's talking about them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, in today's world with Google and everything else, obviously reviews help a lot. And, obviously, I mean, there's social proof. People like to see that, like, oh, there's lots of other people who are happy with this person or with this firm or whatever. And we just can't have that. So, that's from an operational standpoint. I'll say from a client, talking with clients, there's a lot of, especially with, we live in the information age. So, having the ability to Google things, is great, because you can learn a lot. But the problem is, obviously, as you can imagine, I get people send me, reels and TikToks and, YouTube videos and different things of.
We don't use TikTok.
Okay. Yeah. Well,
I'm in the cybersecurity industry. We don't use TikTok.
Yeah. I don't either. But
That's a whole other show.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't either, but I'll have people send me, clips and little short videos and stuff of, whatever person on there talking about whatever financial or business thing.
Financial bros.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. Sipping their White Claws and
It's fun. You know what? I'm gonna segue into this.
Sure.
So I'm watching oh God, what is the name of it? It's about that kid that ran up the GameStop stock.
I have that on my Netflix list. I haven't watched it.
I'm in the middle of it right now, and it's so entertaining. And it's got Seth Rogen in it and a few others. What is
Dumb
it
Money.
called?
Dumb Money.
Yeah.
Of course, Suds knows.
Yeah.
But thank you, Suds. It's and it's neat. I mean, this guy ran by the name of what? Exploding Kitty, or what was his handle?
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. So, like explode, and he wore a cat shirt, and he had cats that he would put up on the screen. But he also had his portfolio that he shared on the screen and talked about it. And he had young people, other millennials, going on and listening to them and investing and throwing money into it, and it ran up the stock. What is from knowing what you know, what maybe me and the audience don't know, how in the world does something like that happen? And what did it do, or how would that impact the hedge fund guys, the guys, the guys that are in it for the money, that are in it for the big money? How did it impact them, or can we not talk about that on this show?
So a couple references. You mentioned your dad said, "Oh, that's gambling." Now that's gambling. That's not investing, right?
Right.
So, and then referencing, I talked about behavioral finance. So there is all sorts of there's what's called herding. There's recency bias. There's all sorts of kind of mental things, I guess, that trip you up when it comes to making decisions in general, but certainly financial decisions. So that's a classic case of herding, right? And fear of missing out, right? So people see, and social media and the internet is great at kind of proliferating that. I say great kind of tongue in cheek, right? So it's not great, but a lot of it can catch on, and a lot of people, you see that with some cryptocurrencies and things like that, where people are like to the moon, and everybody piles in, and so that drives the price up, and then at some point it tanks. It comes back down. Yeah. So I think that's kind of those classic cases of that's what's happening. So people don't understand why they make the decisions that they make. I know that sounds really kind of like a crazy thing to say, but
it's influencers. It's anybody watching this show might be influenced by this show.
Sure.
And we don't, I think he at the time only had like 400 followers, and the people that were investing in him were just people that were trying to learn a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And then when he gave them that tip, they just threw their money in, what little bit of money they had at the time. And so did they, and I haven't finished that show, and I know you haven't watched it yet, but did they make money?
Oh, there's a certain amount of people that, just like with cryptocurrencies and GameStop and AMC and some of those other, some of those trades.
But it's gambling.
It is gambling.
Okay.
It is it's investing if you made money, right? You can justify it to yourself to say I
made money, I'm going to do it again. Then you're going to lose it.
Yep.
It's the same way you put money in the slot. You won $1,000, and then you start feeding another slot. It pays out a little bit, and then after the end of the day, you're back to ground zero.
Yeah, gambling. So casinos really do have that figured out. Like they understand behavior, and they understand, again, these companies understand what makes us tick more than we do, and I don't want to say manipulate that, but they take advantage of it.
Yeah.
Right. So they understand that, that little bit of dopamine hit every time you're like, oh, you won a little bit. And so it'll keep you right at the time you're at the slots, and you're like, you know what, I'm done with this. And then you win a little bit, and you're like, well, okay.
That's probably why they issue those cards, so they can track you around the casino. I remember when I got one of those cards, and I don't go to the casino I haven't been to the casino, I think, since my dad passed away quite a while ago. I used to go with him to take him there. And, and I remember putting my card in that machine going, all I saw was a tracking device.
Yeah. Because why else would you need that? Right?
I know.
Yeah.
But they give it to you going, you're going to get perks. You're going to get a free hotel stay, whatever. But what they're really doing is tracking your behavior. Now, if I won $1,000 on a machine, one thing they don't know about me is I'll take 20 out of that $1,000, gamble it to waste a little bit of time, and leave.
Yeah.
So,
well, and there was another, I forget. So this was, somebody told me this the other day, and I think it was a casino, but yeah, they had a card, right? So they have your email and they have your other information. And I guess he hadn't gone in a while. So they sent him an email like, hey, we're giving you, I don't know, $20 or $100, whatever it was, like on your card. So next time you come, you got $20 or $100 or whatever the dollar, whatever the number was.
Sucking you in.
Yeah. So, the psychology of, I'm not going to wait. I can only spend this $20 here. I'm not going to waste $20. I'm just, I'm just not going to spend this $20. So I need to go spend the $20, right? I need to go. It's a free $20. It's free money, right? So, they know all these little.
It's kind of our last show was on marketing and how Smarter Web uses data to help steer those campaigns for companies. And that's what the world is now. It is a world of data collection and using that data to analyze behavioral patterns so you can get marketed to and sold to and whatever else. And so this is a good segue into you, because I can gamble. I can use, for instance, an app. There's tons of apps out there now by a number of different organizations where you can load it on your phone and invest in the stock market. But what I see there is I'm having to read and learn by reading, and I don't have anybody sitting there really truly understanding my assets, where I am in life, who I am, what my passions are. It is just mere data. Now, data uses algorithms. So from once you invest in maybe a stock, it's going to do a very similar thing to what you might do. But tell me, from your perspective, your innovative approach to helping me with my strategic planning and then investing in those things that somebody would invest in on that app, but through you, and what the differences are. And on the surface, it's the personal relationship and the fact that I can call you and go, hey man, I got a little bit of money here and I don't know what to do with it. I think I'm gonna spend it on a depreciating asset like a Cybertruck. Well, that might not be. I don't know. We'll have to see. But and I really want it, but I want to make money. Right. Where do you come in and what are you going to say to me? And where's that conversation going to go?
So I think the point that I started to make earlier that I never got to because I went off on a rabbit trail was, the information age and Googling stuff. And like Google or whatever, when you're searching for stuff, it's going to show you what you're searching for, not other things that you may not know to search for. So, I mean, I run into that sometimes where, somebody will come and say, hey, I want to do this thing. It's like, all right, well, why? Well, I'm trying to do this. Oh, okay. Well, there's probably a better way, did you know about this thing? Because this is a better way to do that thing that you're trying to do. Well, no, I didn't know about that. Right. So that's kind of the problem with the information age is, and even if that thing was good, who knows if it was the right thing for you to do in your situation. So the approach
So the apps, in my opinion, are for a younger person that doesn't have that minimum to spend with an advisor. Yeah. Is that what I see? Is that
some people just like doing it just for the fun of it. And so that's why, and again, I promise I'll answer your question here in just a moment, but I think working with a fee-based firm that charges for their time and advice kind of democratizes that. So we work with a lot of younger people who, you have to pay us for our services, but it doesn't matter to us if you have a little money or a lot of money, or if you want to self-manage or any of that other kind of stuff. Because you're paying for the advice, which is what you're here for. I think most people want thorough, unbiased advice that isn't contingent upon you buying something from me or me managing your money. They just want good, thorough, unbiased advice. And there's not a lot of ways to get that. Right. So that, and, the approach we take is we want to, if we can help you with your finances, help you achieve the things in life that you want to achieve, that's the biggest win for us. So to be able to help you achieve the things in life that you want to achieve, we need to have a good, thorough understanding of you and what makes you tick and your experiences and what's important to you and what your goals are, not just personal goals, but family goals and all that sort of stuff. And people's goals change, right? People's ideas about things change. And so not just like, great, here's your, here's your profile. And I'm assuming that you're a static person that never, things don't change. And so this is the way we're going to do things. No, I mean, having, the relationship with the person, understanding them, really understanding them and their family and the dynamics and all those things is what's most important. So we generally start with what I call the, kind of touchy-feely questions. So like, all right, we're really not talking about money much, but I need to have a good understanding of you and your family and what makes you tick and your experiences. And like one of the first questions we ask is like, when you were growing up, what was your family's experience and attitude around money? And you'll get all sorts of different answers, right? So either it was an area of anxiety and they didn't grow up with much, or they just didn't talk about it, or they were spenders, or you'll hear all sorts of stuff. And then the next question is, well, so that experience, how does that shape the way you feel about money and finances today? Right? Because that will inevitably have some sort of direct impact on that. So just to give you an idea.
So funny. I'm thinking about the psychology of it from my own personal experiences. And I think about myself and I'm a baby of 6 children. Okay. So I'm the baby. Yeah. So I had something to prove, I think, growing up. But my next oldest, my brother, he's 7 years apart from me. Oh. So I came along way late.
Baby.
Yeah, I'm the baby. Yeah. They were all kind of grouped together, and then here I come along. And, they saved the smartest guy for last.
That's right.
Hey, I'm not humble.
Yeah,
right? So, no, but my brother spent money like it was going out of style. Still does. He's that guy that has to have the latest flashy boat, the biggest truck, the everything. Yeah. And I love my brother. And he, of course, I support him. I love to, go over there and hang out with him and use his, help him use his stuff. But here I am. I saved my money as a kid. I still save money today. When I make money, I'm looking at ways to turn that money into more money to establish a good retirement for me and my wife and help my kids as they get older. But when we were kids, I would, this is funny. Once a week, I would pour my piggy bank out and count my money. And every now and then, my money would come up a little short. My brother was coming into my room and taking my money.
He's 7 years old.
Yeah, but he knew I always had money, and he couldn't figure out why. It's because I never spent it. And oh my God! But it's funny how. I mean, I was a little kid when I was saving that money, and now here we are in our 50s and 60s, and we're the same way. We're the same way. But it's just funny. I know we got off topic, but I had to use an analogy here because it's all about psychology and who you are as a person and where you really want to put your money.
Yeah, and again, back to like the behavioral finance, and like I'll never be the type of planner that tells somebody like, no, you can't buy that thing or you shouldn't buy that thing, right? It's my job to show you financially what the consequences are, positive or negative, of the decision that you're making, right? Whatever that decision is. So as an example, we worked, and this is a younger couple, and they came to us and they're up to their eyeballs in stupid debt. I mean, up to their eyeballs. And we had to really kind of get creative on how we're going to tackle this. And cause they didn't work the kind of jobs where they can, business owners is like, well, we can work harder and make more money, hopefully. Right. But when you're W-2 9-to-5 job, you can't do that. So we really had to get creative on how we were going to try to tackle this debt and what we were going to do. And so obviously one of the things that they had that was a big expense, a big monthly expense, was a boat. And, I was like, look, you got some of these things that just, from the outside looking in, looks like can be easily cut. So I'm just kind of putting in front of you to help you make the decisions. And the boat was one of those things. And they were like, the boat is what we do as a family for fun. And like, that's how we hang out with friends and stuff like that. So we would really like,
okay. And not the boat, the boat.
And I get that. Like so, okay. So something else has got to go. Right. So or like, here's the consequences of that. And that's fine. I totally understand that. Cause if that's your thing, that's what you do as a family. totally get that. They have younger kids and all that stuff. And it's like, that's experiences, and that's certainly worth something. So here's some other ways that we can do that. Right. So I just think
Get a smaller boat.
yeah,
There you go.
Time to get
That's
a
what
John
I
boat.
would have said.
Yeah,
Get a smaller boat.
Yeah, just point is though, is that there's things that make sense on paper, and then there's things that make sense to the person, right? So, it's not my job to tell them how to live their lives, but I do want to have a really good understanding of them and what makes them tick and what's important to them. So again, the boat was important. So okay, that's kind of a non-negotiable that can't be cut. Great, we have to make other decisions, right? We have to make other sacrifices elsewhere if the boat is kind of a non-negotiable. So, but yeah, I just think that having a really good understanding of the person instead of just looking at dollars and cents and numbers and what's on paper, obviously that's important, but
yeah, so this is fantastic. This is exactly what you're not going to get from an app. This is what you're going to get from Andrew Martin. This is what you're going to get from your financial advisor.
Right.
That's going to sit down with you and map out your financial future and help you manage and grow your wealth.
Right.
Or lack of in the case of those folks. But it sounds like you help them maintain their lifestyle while, growing their wealth and attempting to get out of debt. So this is a good segue into technology. We're on Nerds on Tap. We always get nerdy on here. We have to talk about technology. That's part of our MO. It's in our DNA. And so tell me, so in the tech industry, we're always adapting to the changing world of tech to stay on the cutting edge for our clients. How often do you have to adapt in the world of financial planning? Go ahead.
Yeah. So, COVID for a lot of people was a very kind of a recent real world example of that, right? People working remotely and stuff like that. So we were lucky in the fact that we had been working with clients via Zoom for, years before that, or a good while before that, working virtually with clients. And so we didn't have to, there wasn't a big adjustment, right? It was just, great. We've been doing this. We're used to it and all that. I will say as an industry, the cybersecurity obviously being a very important part of that, because, you have people's information.
I know a good company that can help everyone.
Yeah.
Digital Boardwalk.
Yeah. And that, seriously, as well as anybody that is a ever growing concern on all sorts of fronts. Right. And becomes increasingly important because the criminals or whatever are becoming more and more sophisticated in how they're utilizing that. But so that's a big concern. But I think like with AI and stuff like that. So obviously in our industry, at least it's just buzz about it kind of in general with everybody. But, I think there's a lot of fear with some of the folks about like, oh, is that going to replace us? Or is that it's like, well, it's the same thing with the internet, right? There's just going to be a ever growing gap between the people who are using technology and people who aren't, just like with the internet, right?
Yeah.
When the internet came around, maybe some advisors didn't hop on that train, some did. And I think there just became kind of a growing gap between the success of the ones who did and didn't, or who were late to the party. I think same thing with, I think AI is going to be kind of one of those pivotal moments as well, just in how they utilize it. But
AI's been around for a long time. People just don't know it because now it's a buzzword in the media.
That's right.
ChatGPT and Google's solution, they're shaping the future, and AI is driving more things than people realize nowadays. And AI in terms of robotic process automation, as far as making apps talk to one another and software talk to one another, algorithms in the world of finance, right? It helps shape someone's financial future, because behind the scenes, under the hood of Andrew Martin's Atlas, you guys are probably leveraging AI, or at least your back office is, right? And they're leveraging AI to find the best investments for your clients.
It's going to be really interesting to the marriage between AI and quantum computing, and you can probably speak to that much better than I could. But the relatively near future is going to be interesting.
Yeah, and I'm not going to get into a lot of those topics. We actually talked about it on the episode before last when we had James Todd from Digital Boardwalk on. We talked all about cybersecurity. You need to check out that episode, Andrew, because he's one of our top lieutenants. I've known James for going on 16 years now, since I brought him in as a young pup, and we kind of grew up together in the world of cybersecurity. And he is a top resource for that. And if you listen to that episode, it'll open your eyes to what's going out on the landscape. So let's have a beer. Suds?
All righty. Our next beer is the Maduro Brown Ale from the Cigar City Brewery in Tampa, Florida. It's a Northern English brown ale brewed with flaked oaks, full in body and silky on the palate. Maduro's brown ale, chocolate, and espresso notes are rounded out by toffee-like qualities and a light woody hop presence.
That's another evening one.
Yeah, and when I hear nuts in beer, I'm not a big nut beer or brown, nut guy. Yeah. But yes, that is definitely an evening one. Oh, I'll finish it. It's not my favorite of the four here, so.
It's got a nice aftertaste, I think.
Yeah, the aftertaste is good.
That's the toasty, nutty aftertaste.
Yeah.
that you don't like.
Yeah. Yeah, well, maybe I lied. I don't know.
I'm a less hoppy guy. I don't like super hoppy bitter.
It's funny. I when IPAs came out, I was all about the IPA. Yeah. IPAs give me headaches.
Really?
I drink 2 IPAs, next day I'm going to wake up with a headache.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So my wife's the same way. We were all about the IPAs because I liked the zing, at the end of the beer.
Yeah.
But I'm more of a lager Pilsner guy these days, and bourbon. Well, I'm learning.
Yeah.
I'm learning the world of bourbon, and I'm really becoming fascinated by it, to be honest with you. So we're going to get into... we got a little bit of time left. We're going to go into our final segment and then conclude the show. We're going to talk about navigating financial uncertainties. Let's talk about your expertise in helping clients navigate those uncertainties. I mean, we don't have a crystal ball or a sport betting book like Marty McFly did. So how do you, Mr. Martin, how do you predict the future when it comes to how to handle my money?
Sure. I think creating a plan that we've stress tested everything as much as we can, right? So when we'll do cash flow analyses and we'll look at, all right, if we were to make these decisions over a long period of time based on these assumptions, how does this turn out? Then we start throwing curveballs at it. What happens if this happens? What happens if this happens? What happens if this happens? And so on. And then, that'll give us a good kind of idea of, all right, well, what happens if there's a really bad recession right after you retire? What happens if one of the spouses needs long-term care, which there's a 91% chance between a married couple that one of you will need long-term care?
Yeah.
What happens if there's an early death of a spouse, right? So there's what's called the widow's penalty tax, which is kind of a made-up term for a phenomenon that happens that, if you're a surviving spouse, you're going to realize a loss in income at least via Social Security. The surviving spouse gets to keep the higher of the 2 Social Securities, but not both. So they're going to lose one of the Social Securities. And you're going to go from being married finally jointly to now being a single filer. So you're probably going to be in a higher tax bracket. So if you're making $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year married finally jointly, that puts you in a 12% tax bracket. If you're a single filer making $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year, that puts you in a 22% tax bracket, right? So kind of the double whammy of loss of income, higher taxes, which is another form of loss of income. And so how do things look over a long period of time with that? So anyways, that's just some examples. But point is that we start throwing curveballs at the plan and say, all right, here's how this holds up in all these different scenarios, right? And if one of those scenarios would really kind of break the plan, all right, we've identified this as a risk. What do we need to do to start mitigating against this risk? Because there's always answers to things, right? So how do we mitigate against that? What do we need to do? So I think just having a good well thought out plan that, to the extent that we can, one of the scenarios is not an alien invasion or a zombie apocalypse, right? We're not looking at those sorts of things, but to the extent that we can and what makes sense, we're trying to stress test things. And so I think having a plan that, with every gimme, there's a gotcha, right? So if we can, all right, we need to do this with this amount of money or with this asset or what have you, and here's the reasons why, and we're going to have to give up this to get what this is going to give us, but this is going to give us, right, this makes sense in context with everything else. So I think, again, I'm a big balance guy, so I think looking at everything in perspective and context of, all right, we have this type of asset, or we have this here that's going to do this for us. There's strengths and weaknesses to this part, and so what can we do to counter those weaknesses with another part, right? So I think, boil it down into a sentence, I think creating a plan that is, I don't want to say bulletproof, but is well thought out to make sure that to the extent that we can, whatever life throws at us, that we're able to withstand that stressor.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. The world is crazy right now, right? I mean, there's a lot of crazy things going on out there. Like in the words of my 11-year-old daughter's favorite singer, Olivia Rodrigo, it's brutal out here.
Indeed.
So this is always our shortest segment of the show before we conclude. Tell me about, and I think you touched on one earlier, but a success story. I'd like to hear a success story and an example from your career. And this success story could be anything pivotal along your career where you really made someone or a family very happy with something you might have done for them. Now, I know we talked about the boating family. That was a good example of how you helped steer a family. But tell me, because I know there's got to be gratification in this for you, and it's not just a job for you. You really, I think, get gratification when you see smiles, when you're getting a return for those customers. Let's talk about that, because you're creating someone's retirement.
Yeah. And yes, to your point, the kind of living vicariously through other people's situations and knowing that, like, all right, albeit it was a very small part, but, in those successes, you're like, I had a part in that, and that felt good. So there's been times that people have gone through, and maybe I don't want to share too many details just for,
No, I understand.
Yeah, but there's been times that people have gone through really tough things that, afterwards they're, I've gotten messages and emails, and I mean, we've gotten cards from clients and stuff like that, and they're like, I'm just so thankful that you came into our lives and you were, because like this would have been a totally different experience had it not been for you and what you've done for us over the last couple of years. And it's, it's emotional even to, kind of think about, but it feels real good, albeit, like it was tough situations and stuff like that, but it feels real good. The gratitude that you get from those people and just the working with great people that can, after they've gone through something terrible, still have the mindset of being thankful for, the things that they're thankful for. It's a really neat experience.
Am I going to make you cry on the show?
Man, it's tough. I'm thinking about a case in particular that is tough, but it is really nice.
I understand we can't talk about that case on the show
Sure.
because obviously you have obligations, you have fiduciary obligations and privacy obligations to that family. But I like hearing about it, and I like seeing you light up, and I enjoy seeing your emotional reaction to it. Folks, you may want to watch this one on YouTube because Andrew, it's the first time I think I've gotten a guest to cry on the show. But that's great because
it's the beer. I'm emotional.
It's the beer. No, but it shows your personal, passionate involvement with your customers, and I think that says a lot about you, and it says a lot about what you can do for the folks out there. So I want to kind of jump over here a little bit, and let's talk about a call to action for listeners to seek professional financial guidance, steer them in the right direction. And I'm gonna dump a bunch of questions here and let you answer them how you will.
Sure.
When should they start investing? Oh, I know the answer to that, but I'm gonna let you answer it. How do they start? What if they don't have any money to invest, or is that a short-sighted way of looking at it? And then we can maybe toast a beer to all your answers. So Go ahead.
Obviously getting started. Everybody we talk to that, they always say, I wish I would have gotten started earlier. Right. I mean, just across the board, everybody says that. So I think just taking the first step. So again, talking about psychology, taking the first step, getting started doing something is the hardest, just like getting the ball rolling, right? So that old analogy, and the hardest is just getting it moving at all. And then the faster it gets moving, the easier it is to keep it moving, right? But the hardest part is that huge push to get it moving. And so, just like getting off the couch, the hardest part is getting off the couch, right? Taking that first step. So whatever that looks like for you, whether that be to sign up for your retirement plan through work, right, and start putting in 1% into it or something like that, whether that be to reach out to a financial professional or start reading books and, watching YouTube pages or doing something like that to try to educate yourself on some things. And that's the interesting thing about education, skills and knowledge, is that the compounding effect on skills and knowledge is amazing, and nobody can take those things from you, right? You can lose money. You can't lose skills and knowledge. So building your own skills and knowledge, I think, is a good place to start. And that could come from seeking help from somebody who, and trust or what have you, or of course, picking up books and doing that sort of stuff. But I think that's a good place to start. The younger you are, so again, to your point, right, when you're in your 20s or something like that, and you think like, oh, well, this is beer money that I'm putting in my 401k or whatever it is, and I should be...
Yeah, don't take my beer money.
Yeah. So, what's interesting? It takes $27.40 a day to blow in frivolous spending to blow $10,000 a year.
Especially if you shop at Starbucks.
Right.
They shouldn't say that on the show. My 11-year-old daughter, Starbucks and Stanley cups. I have no idea.
Yeah.
I was just, and you saw me looking back here at our backdrop. I have a lot of books here, and I thought I brought in, I think I have a book called The Beginner's Guide to Investing, which is a very thin, short read, which gives you the basic outline of how to get started and what you should be doing. Do you have a book recommendation?
Yeah, there's The Psychology of Money, which is a great one. There is behavioral finance books out there. So I think really understanding some of our own biases and some of the things that can, again, back to like the gambling and these, the casinos understand what makes us tick and how we make decisions better than we do.
Yeah.
So understanding those things will really will really help. The Psychology of Money, there's some behavioral finance books. There's The Intelligent Investor.
I like the title of that one. Is that, so that's a book you read coming up? And what is that? The Intelligent Investor. So.
Yeah. So I think that one is more on like the stock picking,
okay,
or, stuff like that. But
that's not going to help someone when they first get started, right?
It could, if they are on the apps and choosing individual stocks or something like that, maybe instead of chasing, the GameStop stocks or something like that, maybe they can take a more intelligent approach to what stocks they hold, if they choose to go that route. But there's lots of other books out there that I'm sure I'm not mentioning. And when you're young, I don't agree with everything that Dave Ramsey has to say. In fact, I probably disagree. Agree with less than, disagree with more than what I agree with. But his, thought on like budgeting and debt elimination and things like that are pretty good, universal stuff that if you're just starting out, what can really hinder your growth is not knowing how to budget. Again, you can budget for beer money, right? So not knowing how to budget and getting yourself in debt and then having to climb out of that.
You know how I budgeted for beer money when I lived in the tent?
Mm-mm.
I limited my food intake to ramen noodles, beanie weenies, and crackers. And I had enough money left over for beer.
There's
so,
calories in beer,
hey,
too, right? So
I had enough money to buy beer. I wasn't. I won't eat ramen noodles today, but hey, it is what it is.
Yeah.
It was a long, long time ago in my life, and you know what? I'm glad I did it because it really made me work harder through life and understand the value of family and growth and personal growth. So tell our audience before we toast our last beer and introduce our last beer, they can find you on your website at atlasfinancialstrategies.com.
Yep.
Tell them how else they can find you. Look at this camera on the left.
Oh, sure.
Talk to the audience and just tell them how they can find you, Andrew.
Yep, we have a YouTube page as well. It's relatively new, so there's a couple dozen videos on there, but we're adding to it, of course, every week. So we again, hopefully it's good, useful content there. And of course, I'm happy to take phone calls if you. And again, just take it as your opportunity to get free advice. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm not trying to talk you into working with me. But if there's something that you've, from a financial planning standpoint or a business planning standpoint, it's like, I really need somebody's help or advice with these things and you're not sure where to go, I'm happy to take a phone call, help you as much as I can. If I need to refer you to somebody to get the help that you need or whatever, I'm happy to do that. But the point is that you get the help that you need. So, and that'll be free. And again, nobody's trying to sell you anything. I'm not going to try to talk you into working with me, but it's just meant to be a valuable free piece of, some free information, hopefully.
Well, Andrew, it's been a pleasure having you on the show today. Suds, tell us about tell us about our final beer and let's toast and toast to what a great episode.
All right, so this beer, the beer distributor was loading them up, and he said, you have to try this one. It's really good, but I don't know if I'm trust him. He seemed like a frat guy. It's the Boom Sauce Double IPA from the Lord Hobo Brewhouse in Woburn, Mass. A big, bold IPA with a complex hop profile with 5 different hops. It hits you with a strong tropical fruit flavors before mellowing out to finish with a hint of earthiness.
That's pretty mild.
It's hoppy.
It starts out like it's going to really hit you, but it doesn't get that finish that you're expecting with an IPA.
It doesn't, yeah.
You don't get that back throat bite that you get in an IPA.
Yeah.
But you get it all as you're taking it in.
Yep.
It's 8%.
It's much more mild than I thought.
Well, we need more of that if it's 8. No, I'm kidding. I kid. Thank you, everybody, for getting nerdy with us for an hour. An hour and a half. And thank you, Mr. Andrew Martin, for coming on the show. You guys go check out atlasfinancialstrategies.com. Become a client if you will. Otherwise, take his advice. Go make money, ladies and gentlemen. Grow your wealth. Build your retirement. Have a great day. Thank you. Cheers, my fellow nerds and beer lovers. Stay tuned for more Nerds on Tap. Oh, and one more thing. Help us spread the nerdy love and the love for great brews by sharing this podcast with your friends, colleagues, and fellow beer enthusiasts. Let's build a community that embraces curiosity, innovation, and the enjoyment of a cold one.